Hi, it's Penny here, and today I'm going to be wrapping up all the books that I read in the month of October. So I think I read 11 books, 4 graphic novel type things, and then 7 more novelly things. As usual, I'm going to do this book battle style, which means I pair up all the books and I battle them against each other until we come up with the best book of the month. So firstly, let's start with the 3 adult fantasy books that I read. We've got The Sunlit Man by Brandon Sanderson, up against A Conjuring of Light by V.E. Schwab, and Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie. So The Sunlit Man is the 4th and final secret project book by Brandon Sanderson, and to be honest, it was my second to least favorite, better than The Frugal Wizard's Guide to Surviving Medieval, still can't say it, The Frugal Wizard's Guide to Surviving Medieval England. Better than that, but also in a lot of ways I felt like it was very similar. Basically, we have this man named Nomad, and he is jumping from world to world trying to escape these people who are after him, and he ends up on this world, which is a really interesting world where the sun travels really fast. It actually reminds me of the Maori myth, Maui, and how he caught the sun. But anyway, the sun goes really fast, and so the people who live there are constantly moving around the planet to keep away from it, because basically the sun just destroys anything it touches. So Nomad is basically trying to regain his power so that he can once again jump off world, keep running away. But while he's there, he kind of gets involved with the local world issues and tries to help out there. I really wish that we had gotten more of a perspective from this world, because what I was really interested in was the world and the main character Nomad less so. But it is worth noting that Nomad is a character from the main Cosmere books, even if it takes a while for you to realize what the connection is there. And so I think for really big Cosmere fans, this is an important one to read. However, it's a little bit weird because I'm not sure exactly where it goes in the Cosmere timeline, and I definitely think anyone going into the story without having read to the point that they need to would be quite confused and just would be missing quite a lot, because there were definitely references to Mistborn. I'm pretty sure Mistborn Era 2, even though I haven't read that yet. Also Warbreaker, also the Stormlight Archives, also Elantris, also some of the short stories. Like, basically, you really should have read all the Cosmere books before you read this, and I don't think that that was really clearly stated enough. Also, I should note, I still don't have my physical copy, but I'm hoping that I'm going to get it next week after I film this, and maybe I'll do a double unboxing with my November box, which is actually going to come about the same time. I do think the book is going to be particularly beautiful, so that's good. But yeah, I think just the main problem with this book is that the plot wasn't really for me. I wanted more of the world rather than Nomad's experience, and it was just too action heavy for me as well. Okay, then we have A Conjuring of Light. This was a reread for me. It is the 3rd and final book in the Darker Shades of Magic trilogy by V.E. Schwab. I have been rereading this series in preparation for The Fragile Threads of Power, which is waiting for me at the library right now, and I have no time to read it, so that is a problem for me to solve. But anyway, I've reread this series on audiobook, and for me, that was not a great decision. The narrators are Michael Kramer and Kate Redding, who also narrate the Wheel of Time books. I recently finished the Wheel of Time books, and I didn't really love them. So having the same narrators was just like throwing me back into that Wheel of Time, I don't really like this kind of mindset. And also, I just feel like these books and those books have a very different tone, so having the same audiobook narrators didn't seem right to me. As well, I felt like a lot of what happened at the beginning of this book should have been put at the end of the previous book, and the previous book almost nothing happened, so like maybe more could have happened if that had been put in the previous book, and then this book could have gotten into the plot a lot quicker, and I think I would have enjoyed that myself. As well, I do think this one was quite both action heavy and also very character focused. So it was either action or character stuff, and there wasn't really a lot of plot. I say that knowing that I just think the audiobook narration style ruined the whole thing for me. I could see that at times certain things that were happening in this were quite epic, but I couldn't feel it because I wasn't enjoying the narration style. So I do still think this is a good book, but I didn't have a great time with it this time. I know I gave it 5 stars the first time I read it. But anyway, rereads can't win the book battle, so we'll put it aside for now. Then lastly, we have Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie. So this is the 4th book in the First Law world. I have previously read the first trilogy, the First Law trilogy, and I really liked it. This one is set just after the events of that trilogy, but kind of follows some characters that we do know from the first trilogy and some new characters. Primarily, there is a woman who an attempt is made on her life, and after that she decides to get revenge, and so she's going out trying to kill the 7 people that were involved in this attempt on her life. I do think the way this was written did make it feel a little bit formulaic in that each kind of person that she was going after was a separate section, and then every section was like preparing for the murder, executing the murder, making a run for it. And there were times as we went through where it started breaking that formula a bit, but it never broke it enough for me to feel like the plot got really interesting. As well, like the first trilogy, you get to the end and in a lot of ways the main characters have all come full circle. Have they really learned anything? Have they? In this one I actually felt like they all ended up like worse people than they did in the beginning, which was very unsatisfactory. And I just think I couldn't get as connected with the characters as I did in the first trilogy. Wow, I feel like I'm really complaining about all these books. I did think they were all quite well written, but I also do have a lot of complaints about all of them. Maybe I'm just too picky. Anyway, the summary of Best Served Cold is I think if you really liked the first trilogy, you will like Best Served Cold, but I'm really looking forward to getting through the standalones and getting to the next trilogy where I think the bigger plot that you can see in the background of Best Served Cold, I'm hoping that bigger plot will kind of become more of a thing. Fingers crossed. Anyway, if I am putting these 3 books up against each other, I'm not going to pick A Conjuring of Light because that is a reread and they're not allowed to win anyway, but it probably wouldn't have won anyway. And I think between The Sunlit Man and Best Served Cold, I still had a better time with Best Served Cold. I will say the writing in Best Served Cold was hilarious in some parts, and also some lines in there like felt really deep and meaningful to me, whereas if I compare that to The Sunlit Man, which mostly the writing was very simple and it was so much action. Like I thought Best Served Cold had too much action, but Sunlit Man was even more. So Best Served Cold is going to go through to the next round. Okay, then let's talk about the YA fantasies I read. So we have Evershore, again by Brandon Sanderson, up against Murder at Mykenai by Catherine Mayo. So firstly, Evershore by Brandon Sanderson. This is the 3rd novella in the Skyward series. So in the Skyward series you have the first 2 books, then you have 2 novellas, then you have the 3rd book, then you have another novella, and then the 4th book has just come out or is coming out very soon. Either way, I have a hold on it at the library. So Skyward is a hard series to talk about. Basically, humans are stuck on this planet, and anytime they try to leave they get attacked by aliens, and so mostly we're following these young people who are training to become fighter pilots. The main series mainly follows Spencer, but the novellas follow like her flight crew that she's been training with. And in the novellas we learn a lot about the slugs, which the slugs are turning out to be my most favorite part of the series. Kind of makes me laugh because I keep saying this series is getting a bit too silly for me, and surely you would think something with slugs would be too silly for me, but actually I love the slugs. So we learned more about the slugs in this 3rd novella, and we also learned more about these powers. They call them cytonic powers that some people have. So I really liked what was done with the powers. I really liked the new worlds that we are exploring. So the novellas are really getting out into the world and exploring some of the concepts and the cultures that Brandon Sanderson has created in this series. I do still think it was a bit silly at some points. The ending really frustrated me because I thought it was like super unrealistic and like super cheesy, but I'm reminding myself that this is for a young adult audience and that maybe they would be more likely to overlook that. I also just think throughout this book series, like, it over explains things for me, but again, a younger audience might need that over explanation, so I'm willing to let it go. I do think these books are a lot of fun, but I really hated Cytonic, the 3rd book. It was just way too silly for me. But some of the ideas and the concepts are really interesting, so I'm hoping the 4th book won't be so silly. But also, as I say that, I'm thinking about the ramifications of some of the things that happened in the novella, which didn't make sense, and that's going to annoy me in the final book. I know it is. Also, if you're thinking about skipping the novellas, don't. Like, they have so much important information in them, I don't think it would make sense if you skip them. So keep that in mind. Then, the other YA book I read is Murder at Mykenai by Catherine Mayo, who is a New Zealand author. This is basically a story set in ancient Greece. We're following Menelaus, the teenage son of the assassinated High King of Greece, and his friendship that he forms with Odysseus. I am terrible at ancient Greek pronunciation, and it doesn't matter. This was really interesting. It starts out just as like a fun story about these young boys getting up to hijinks, and then it gets quite dark and deals with some very real issues to do with trauma and abuse and rape and suicide. Like, it gets really dark, which I was not expecting, but I also thought it was dealt with quite well for a YA book, so I didn't mind it. I had a fun time with it, and I could definitely see a lot of people getting something out of this. And also, like, if you like Greek myth retellings, this is an interesting one. It's a little bit different in that it's following these Greek heroes when they're a lot younger, but it does still pull in a lot of stories and figures from the Greek myths. So, if I'm putting Murder at Mykenai up against Evershore, it's a bit of a hard one. I would say objectively, even though there's no such thing as objectiveness in reading books, I would say objectively, I think writing in Evershore is better, and like the world building and the characterization. Like, I often criticize Brandon Sanderson for his simple writing style, but I think this was actually more simple. And it is true that both these books deal with some quite dark themes. There's characters in both books that are very traumatized by the things that they are going through. You know what? I think I'm actually going to pick Evershore just because of the slugs. Okay, now we're going to talk about the two darker books that I read. Firstly, we've got My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier up against Daughter from the Dark by Marina and Sergey Dyachenko. So firstly, My Cousin Rachel is written by Daphne du Maurier. I have also read Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, and I think that's all. I really liked Rebecca. I didn't like My Cousin Rachel as much, and that's primarily because the main character was insufferable and actually quite abusive, and I just kind of grew to hate him more and more, and I kind of think you're supposed to, but I'm not sure. So basically, this young man has been raised by his cousin, and he is set up to inherit from his cousin. His cousin then goes over to the continent for his health and meets this woman named Rachel. They call her their cousin Rachel because she's somewhat distantly related, maybe not distantly enough, but you know, that's what happens. He ends up marrying this woman, but then it seems like something's not right there. And then this cousin Rachel comes to visit him, and it seems like the things that happened there are maybe going to repeat. But also, like, this main character, the way that he deals with women, what an idiot. And I hate him. So even though then Rachel is also doing some strange things, like, I didn't care because I was just so frustrated with this guy. So I think it did do a good job in some parts of like building anticipation and like making you really suspicious of what was going on, but then it would just drag in some parts and I just got too frustrated, so I still prefer Rebecca. Then we have Daughter from the Dark. I picked this up because it's by the authors of Vena Nostra, which is one of my favorites. I absolutely love it. It's so dark and weird. Unfortunately, Daughter from the Dark was weird, but almost not weird enough for me. We basically follow this radio DJ. He's also a club DJ, and one night when he's out DJing, he comes across this young girl, and he ends up protecting her and taking her back to his apartment. And then she starts telling people that she's his daughter and won't leave. And there's also this strange man that's kind of coming after her, also kind of just telling this guy, like, I'll take her away from you if you want. And the young girl really just seems to want to play violin. There's definitely some weird stuff in here, but unfortunately the main guy just got creepier and creepier, and he was like just a total fuckboy, and I hated him, and the conclusion wasn't something I could get on board with. So just overall, I was a bit disappointed with this one as well. I feel like I'm being too disappointed with everything. Am I too picky? Anyway, if I'm putting these two books up against each other, wow, I'm just realizing that I hated both the main characters in these. Like, they were both the kind of men that I think should go away, or like just don't talk to women, okay? If you're like these men. There were some weird bits in Daughter from the Dark that I really liked though, and a little bit of like philosophy around creativity, and also this teddy bear, which was he alive or not? I think I'm going to pick Daughter from the Dark for the teddy bear. Alright, now let's talk about the graphic novels. Firstly, we're going to start with my unfinished favourites. We have Cucumber Quest chapters 4 and 5, I think, up against Blackbird by Sam Humphries and Jen Bartel. So firstly, Cucumber Quest. The first 4 chapters of this, 0, 1, 2, and 3, have been made into physical books, which I got from the library and I read and I really loved them. We're basically following these rabbits. One is called Cucumber and his dad forces him to go on a quest, even though really he wants to go to magic school and learn about how to use magic so they can make the world a better place. He says, can't we just send my sister Almond because she really wants to be a hero? But their dad makes him go along. But luckily Almond does come along too. And it just escalates from there. I really loved the humour in the first volume. It was so wholesome. And I do feel like chapter 4, maybe it was chapter 5. I read them all together, so who knows. I do feel like one of the characters that got introduced in the last couple of chapters was really coming back to that wholesome humor. I was laughing, I was having a great time. And also I really just love with this series, the characters. I think they've been so well developed that even though the plot has gotten a little bit jumpy, I still feel like I know these characters. A part of that is probably at the end of each chapter there's like a little Q&A section where readers can put in questions for the characters and they answer them, and basically all the characters are adorable. The bad guys and the good guys, I love them all. The saddest thing about this is the 6th chapter has only been written as like a illustrated script. The 5th chapter you can read in the webcomic, then you've got an illustrated script for the 6th chapter, but I thought that 6th chapter was the last chapter. It is not. There should be more. However, there has been no update of the series since 2019. The creator is off doing other things. They said they were taking a long hiatus, but after 4 years you have to wonder, like, are they coming back? I don't know. I really hope we will get more at some point, even as an illustrated script. Honestly, I'd take anything Cucumber Questy at this point. If you're wanting to read something just like super adorable, even though this isn't finished, I would still definitely recommend it. Then we have Blackbird by Sam Humphries and Jen Bartel. That sun in the window is starting to get very annoying. So Blackbird, for starters, the main character in it has my dream hair, which is the main thing that I paid attention to when I was reading this. But also there is kind of this underground magical society in the world that she lives in. She had a glimpse of it when she was younger, and ever since then has been trying to find out more about it and trying to become a part of it. And throughout the series you kind of learn about what happened when she was younger and also like learn more about this magical world. I really enjoyed the story. I liked the emotional journey, and I just thought the art is honestly like beautiful. I love her hair. To be honest, I just really love Jen Bartel's art, and I really love this. But again, this is one where the first volume was released. It binds up, I think, 4 comics, but there are no plans to make any more of this. You can read it as a standalone. However, the main thing is just setting up this whole underground magical world and introducing our main character to it. There's still so much more scope for things to be explored, but I don't think it's ever going to be, unfortunately. So if I'm putting these two up against each other, it's actually really hard because I love these. The art in both of them is really amazing. Like Cucumber Quest, more cute, and I can see towards the end maybe some have been rushed a little bit. The art in this is immaculate. I actually think, I was going to say the world building in this is good too. Maybe that's true for the last 2 chapters of Cucumber Quest. I think I'm going to pick Blackbird as the winner, mainly because she's got my dream hair. And also, this can be read more as a standalone, whereas Cucumber Quest, I think everyone's going to be forever sad that there's no ending. Okay, then we've got 2 more graphic things. We've got In Real Life by Cory, Doctorow and Jen Wang up against The Promised Neverland Volume 4. So firstly, in real life, we are following this young girl who basically gets involved in this MMO, RPG. I do not play those kind of games. But anyway, basically she gets a job where she goes and plays this game and they try to take out like gold farmers. So there are people in China with these jobs where basically they just go and get a lot of in-game currency and then they sell it to other people for real money. So her and this other woman are trying to stop these gold farmers from doing that because they feel like it's cheating the game. However, as she gets more into it, she learns more about this Chinese boy's situation, and I kind of don't want to say more than that. However, it's really hard to talk about my problems with this without talking about it. I'll try to be vague. So basically, I think the message that this was trying to get across is that you don't always know other people's situation, and coming in, especially as like a white savior, is not always the best thing to do. I did feel like that message was somewhat conflicted because in the end she kind of does act like that, though you could make the argument that she listened a lot more near the end. I did think some of the art around the game stuff was really cool, and I did think the overall story was quite well told. I just still don't know how I feel about the overall messaging of it and like the focus of it. I really actually thought that it was going to include perspectives from the Chinese boy. I think that could have been the element that would have made a big difference to the story. Then I read The Promised Neverland Volume 4. I'm wondering now, was it actually Volume 4? I'm pretty sure. Anyway, this follows a group of children in this orphanage who learn that when they are adopted, that's not what's really happening, and so they decide they need to escape this orphanage. I am really frustrated that at the end of Volume 4, we still have not escaped the orphanage, and I am now beginning to wonder, like, this is a 20-volume series, will we get out of the orphanage in the first half of the series, or even more than that? I don't know. I do enjoy the logic of these, and the characters are really cool. I did think there were some really good twists and turns in Volume 4, but honestly, I just want to know more about what's going on outside the orphanage, and if we never get there, how am I going to know? We did learn a little bit in Volume 4, so I did like that bit. And I think overall I am still enjoying the series. I'm just having regrets about having started a 20-book series, you know? And I really think, like, until we get to further on in the series, I'm really not going to know whether I recommend this or not. But so far, like, kind of similar to Death Note in terms of the way the logic is being worked through and, like, the different people mentally trying to outplay each other. So if I'm putting In Real Life up against The Promised Neverland Volume 4, I'm still going to pick The Promised Neverland Volume 4 because I like the story a lot more, and I just feel like the messaging of that is a lot clearer. Okay, now let's do a semi-final round before we pick the best book of the month. So firstly, novels, we have Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie, up against Evershore by Brandon Sanderson, up against Daughter from the Dark by Marina and Sergey Dyachenko. So firstly, we're going to drop Daughter from the Dark because I think you would have got the gist from that battle that I didn't really like either of those books. So that one's gone. I think I just have to go with the adult book because even though both of these were a lot darker, Best Served Cold was like really dark. Maybe it did deal with the dark elements in a more lighthearted kind of way, or at least like the books have a lot of humor inserted into them while also doing really graphic descriptions of the awful things that are happening. Overall, I like the writing of Best Served Cold a lot better, and I'm still really interested to see where the plot is going in the bigger series that we got a lot of hints of in Best Served Cold. So I'm going to pick Best Served Cold as the best novel that I read in the month of October. And then we have Blackbird by Sam Humphries and Jen Bartel up against The Promised Neverland Volume 4. And I think, you know, I'm going to pick The Girl with the Perfect Hair because I love the art in this so much. Then for the final, we're going to have Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie up against Blackbird by Sam Humphries and Jen Bartel. I feel like it's obvious, but it also doesn't feel quite right because, like, this was really easy to get through. I just flew through it. I love my whole experience of reading it. However, that's partly just because it's a bunch of beautiful pictures, you know? Did it have as much depth to it as Best Served Cold? Probably not. Like, I took a long time to get through Best Served Cold, and even though I didn't love every moment of it, there were some parts I really loved. So I think overall, I still got the most out of Best Served Cold. So So I'm going to pick it as the best book of the month. Let me know if you have read any of the books that I talked about in this video, because I would love to chat with you about them down in the comments. Also, please subscribe if you would like to watch any of my other bookish videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.